Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be continuing our discussion about Dead Like Me. This is episode 7, Reaper Madness. So I will be upfront, this is one of my least favorite episodes. So we'll just kind of start off with the things that I don't like about this episode. One, we're now in episode 2 where we haven't seen Roxy but at all. And Roxy's one of the things that really brings the show a lot of life, and it's upsetting to not see her represented at all. The other thing I don't like about this episode is just the general plot. I don't really like the way that the story drives forward. The episode kind of focuses on regret and things that George is regretting from her previous life. She mentors somebody at work who is a lot like how George was before she died. This girl just doesn't really care at all. Her name is Fiona, and she's a one-off character until near the middle end of season 2. She makes George start to think about these things that George did that she doesn't like, how she treated her mom, how she treated her sister, and it starts to bring back some of these old feelings. And then the plot goes into some stuff that Reggie's doing, and we see these moments where Clancy is trying to be a good husband, he's trying to be a good dad, and Joy is just really viciously pushing back and being terrible. And it's weird because we get these ideas from the show that Joy wasn't a bad mom. She really tried really hard, and because of what Clancy did, she became the way that she is now. And this episode kind of paints her out to be this villainous person. And we get so many other senses throughout the show that Joy was not a bad mom. George was just a difficult kid. And we don't get the sense that she was a bad wife. Clancy was not a good person. So this episode and the way that she treats him is kind of strange because we haven't really gotten that context that they're going to therapy. We just get this sense that she's just this vicious ice lady who pushes everybody away, and that's not her character. The other thing I don't really like is the character Ronnie Dobbs. He shows up, he's a schizophrenic person, he can see gravelings, he follows around George, and he has this infatuation with her to the point that it gets him killed. And the way that they approach the storyline isn't with the most sensitivity, and I don't really like that. And I also don't really like the conclusion, which is at the wedding scene where Ronnie falls off not even high enough to be a second floor in a church, falls on this couple, and all 3 of them die. The nature of the death doesn't really make sense. It's not really logical, and a lot of the deaths are kind of funny in Dead Like Me, but this one is one of the more outlandish ones. Like, how did this fall kill all 3 of them? And then the last thing that I don't like about it is that Daisy is strangely absent from the bedroom scenes. So there's points where George is like spreading all these photos across the bed, and Daisy's not there. It's been very clear from the previous episode that Daisy sleeps on that bed and doesn't let George even anywhere near it. And then there's a completely different night where George lets Ronnie stay the night and Daisy's not there at all. And in the very next scene, Daisy's talking about how she thinks that she's gonna rent a hotel and stay the night somewhere else. The whole string of scenes feels like they were filmed out of order, and then when it got time to the editing floor, they realized that they made a mistake, so that's where they tossed in the hotel conversation. But the hotel conversation should have happened before all that, so that it added why Daisy wasn't at the apartment. There are some things that just don't really match up with each other. Those are what my biggest issues are with this episode. The nice things that we get out of this episode are that Reggie has this epiphany moment near the end where she admits to Joy that she doesn't really know why she's so difficult and why everything is such a struggle with her, which I like, but also I don't like, because we got that moment back when they did the taxidermy class in a previous episode, and it's weird to see Reggie fall back into old habits and then jump back into an epiphany moment, which again, she's a kid, so she has every right to do that. But this whole episode in general just feels like it was supposed to be some type of build-up before Daisy was added into the show. It feels like this whole episode was supposed to be a build-up to the previous episode, because in this episode, we have a couple of scenes about food not being great at Der Waffle House for Daisy. It's not that it wasn't bad, it just wasn't made to her liking. And in the previous episode, we got a very clear sense that the cook at Der Waffle House is just not on his game. And then the next episode really is centric around the cook. In the previous episode, there were a lot of epiphany moments, and George is kind of starting to reclaim this new identity of hers and not really focusing on her previous life. And in this one, she's like completely just full of regrets. And it's strange. It honestly, it feels like a script that was supposed to be used before Daisy's entrance, and then they decided to recycle it and write Daisy into it in replacement of Roxy. It doesn't line up in the timeline very well. My favorite thing about this episode is the scene where Daisy is trying to steal this guy's car, so she flashes her boobies at him, and we get a couple of really fantastic lines from Daisy in this episode. The first one is, "I once gave Errol Flynn a hand job in a convertible." And then George responds, "That's a nice story." And the way that delivery is, that's a nice story. I say that all the time when I'm not really interested in something that somebody has to say. I tend to use that line a lot. There's another line that Daisy uses when she gets some food that she doesn't want. She says, "I can't eat it and I won't." And I say that a lot to Jacob when I'm a picky eater, so I identify with that line and I use it a lot. So this episode is just filled with great Daisy quotes. I love Daisy. She's fantastic. She's one of my favorite characters despite being so awful. And those things I love about this episode, the rest of it, I think there were just a lot of flaws in the timeline. And I think if this episode had been previous to the last one, maybe Daisy be written out of it and Roxy be written in, I think I would have liked it a lot more. And I think the story would have made more sense. It would have set up some more things, especially just kind of coming off of Betty leaving the show and George just being full of regrets. I think this would have worked previous to the last one. So those are my thoughts about this episode. Thank you so much for watching and letting me rant about it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.